And we are live. I'm just going to give it a second to let some people jump on board so I don't start before they join in. Sorry for being a little bit late. So we're 15 minutes late today, but just got held up. But here I am, ready to answer your questions. I'll just give it a little bit more. So if you're watching this in replay, just skip forward a little bit. Just going to give it a chance for people to jump on. Ugh. All right, going to get started anyway. So I can see I'm live in everything. Just good to go. Okay, well, firstly, hopefully everyone's had an awesome Easter weekend. So today is Tuesday, so the day after Easter Monday. So hopefully you had a good, fun weekend. I got together with the family, ate a bit of chocolate, just hopefully not too much. And now it's time to kick back in gear. So yeah, hopefully you're switching back on. And for those that are on holidays, still getting in as much training as possible, which I've been seeing. Even the clients that are away on holidays are still getting some stuff in. So it's really good to see. All right, so we got a couple of people that have joined in now. So yeah, if you're just hanging in there watching, just make sure you say hello. Let me know my audio and everything's working all right, because obviously I can't test that. Just leave a comment saying good to go or hello or something like that, and that way I can see who's actually watching as well. If you're watching this in replay, make sure you leave the comment number 2 again, so that I know, you guys are watching it. It's really good to get that feedback. Knowing you're taking advantage of it and listening to all of this stuff. For those that are new to the group, I do these every single week on a Tuesday, same time, 2:00, unless things change. These are the opportunity for you to ask questions about, things to do with your program, things to do with fitness topics that you want me to dive into and really give you a really good answer for, because it's obviously a lot better than trying to text it through. Just chuck your questions up in the Ask the Coach question post, which is in the featured post of your group. Chuck it in there and I'll get around and answer it on Tuesdays at 2:00 every week, unless things pop up. All right, so someone's commented. Let's check you out. Oh, yeah, Steph, good to see you here. Awesome. Yep, if you're watching this, even in replay, if you've got any questions in regards to anything that I'm going over, make sure you leave a comment and I will, get around and answer it for you. I'll just leave a comment, or, if needed, I'll hold off to the next live and give you a really good answer for it. All right, so just got a couple of questions and something, a coach's note as well from me for you guys, just a little bit more understanding with some stuff. Give me a sec. Who else we got on there? I can see there's 2 little eyes, but I've only had 1 comment. Make sure you leave a comment, say hello. All right, so questions, things that I'm going to go over today. So we got 2 questions. We got one from Tyler and one from Megan. So Tyler, real simple one, stretches for a twisted ankle. So he's twisted his ankle and he just wants to know, some stretches to help out with the injury. And then we've got Megan, and she's asking for a bit of an overview of the energy systems used when you're actually doing the beep test. I'm pretty sure that's what you're asking. So if that's not what you're asking, let me know, Megan, because that's how I'm going to answer it. If it's not, let me know, and I'll try to fix it up for the next time. So, and then the last thing that I'm going to go over is just how to calculate your max heart rate for your training zone. So you'll notice with a lot of my programming, I will assign training zones, which are really important to work with because they regulate with how your body's operating for the day. Some days you may be running faster. Some days you may be running or working slower. Either way, you need to know what your maximum heart rate is so that you can work off a percentage of that max heart rate. So I'm going to go over that. All right, first things first is Tyler's question. All right, we got Gavin as well. Awesome. Hi, Coach. I'm happy to be here. Good to see you there. And well done with your soccer as well. It was awesome to see. Okay, so Tyler's question. Stretches for a twisted ankle. All right. So what we need to do is understand what has happened when you twist an ankle. So think of it this way. when you've twisted it, you've overloaded, you've overstretched something in that joint, whether it be muscles, tendon, ligaments, either way, you have damaged something. It's the same as getting a cut on your arm or any sort of bruising or anything like that, or any other part of your body. Look at it that way and realize stretching, when it's bad, like when you've just done it, what's that going to do? It's going to make it worse. If you stretch that injured area, think of if I got a cut here and I stretch it, it's going to open it up. We don't want to be doing that. So what we want to allow it to do to start with is heal and keeping a little bit of movement in there. So the goal with like initially letting an injury like that, like a joint twist or something like that, the goal is to allow it to heal first, but not lock up. So what happens when you get an injury in the joints as well is they become really inflamed. So your body sort of overreacts and they get a lot of inflammation in there. So to help with that and to stop the muscles locking up and seizing up is you just want to create some movement in that joint, whether it be passive or active. To start with, it might be just a bit of passive because it may be a bit too sore to actively do it. So by passive and active, I mean passive is you are grabbing your foot and you're just moving it around a little bit. Active is you actually using your muscles to move it around. So what you want to be doing is moving that joint around, not a shit ton, just enough for it to get some movement in there. And if you are doing it actively with your muscles, what that does as well is when you create a lot of when you injure something, there becomes a lot of waste products in there through the healing process and a lot of fluids retained in that area. Now, they don't get pumped around by your blood. So like by your cardio system, by your cardio system. The way they are pumped around is through the lymphatic system, and your lymphatic system hasn't got a heart like your cardio system does. So the way that that lymphatic system pumps is through your muscles. That's why it's important to keep those muscles activated and moving, because it's going to pump that old fluid out of there and get some nice blood flow into it as well. So that's the main goal when you have done a big injury, like a proper injury that has resulted in a tear of some sort, whether it be tendons, ligaments, anything like that. Okay, just light movement, no overstretching to make the situation even worse. Just keeping that movement in the joint and allowing your body to free it up and get rid of some of that fluid out of there by actually using the muscles and pumping it through. You'll see like a lot of rehab with things like that is just to jump on a push bike and turn over a push bike for a little while. Not any sort of massive resistance or anything, just enough to get those muscles firing. And that's to get that fluid pumping through and also get some fresh blood flow to the joint. So yeah, that's the initial, and it all depends on how big, like how bad you've done it to how long that will take. Another thing like I would recommend is like seeing a physio, is because they can manipulate things by touch as well. So they can massage you out. They can put electrodes on you so that the muscles do these little things to pump that fluid all through, and they'll give you extra exercise as well. So physio is a good thing, but if you can't afford one, then yeah, just getting that movement in multiple times throughout the day without putting it through any pain is a really good thing to be doing. Once the pain sort of subdues a little bit and you're feeling like it's on the mend, then you can start some light strengthening exercises. And that can be as simple as like in the ankle, you can just have a resistance band, wrap it around your foot and then extend your foot and then flex your foot. So you'll got the resistance pulling this way, boom, boom, and then wrap the band around something and do it the opposite way as well. Just something as simple as that can really speed up the healing process as well. Just keeping everything switched on, rather than people that don't do anything with these. Their muscles lock up, they switch off, because when muscles have pain, it inhibits the contraction. So if it learns to not fire anymore, it'll be a lot harder when you come back to training. So you want to keep those muscles firing, and also you want to keep that blood flow going through there. And also, like I said, reduce that inflammation by actually pumping that fluid through using your muscles. So that's about it. Like, yeah, just starting off, keeping that movement in there, getting it, keeping it moving, keeping that inflammation under control, and then just light strengthening until you're back to it. Yeah, that's and like I said, I can't really give you a time frame with it because it all depends on how bad of an injury is. And the last thing is a physio is very handy as well, because they can actually get in and physically manipulate things and massage and all that sort of stuff as well. And then they'll give you exercises depending on your progression through the recovery phase too. All right, mate. So hopefully that helps you out. But yeah, I see it all the time with people. They'll hurt themselves and they'll immediately go to stretch it. I saw a guy, this was years and years ago, a guy at the gym, and I saw him, he was doing shoulder presses, and I saw him just lose control of one of the, just with dumbbells, and I saw him lose control of one of the dumbbells, and it sort of come off balance behind him, and he still had hold of it, and it's ripped his shoulder joint that way. I saw it, as soon as I saw it, I was like, his shoulder's fucked. Because it was pretty heavy as well, and he should have just dropped it. That's why if you're lifting weights and you lose control of them in the gym, drop them. They don't care about people looking at you. Drop that bloody weight, because you'd rather that someone look at you than you injure yourself. So yeah, as soon as I saw him do that, I saw him get up and he's like, oh, started stretching it. And then he's gone over to a pull-up bar and he's jumping on the pull-up bar, stretching it out. But look at it as if you've just sliced your shoulder up. Now you're stretching it to try to make it feel better. It's not going to happen. Your time in the gym today is done. So get out of the gym and go do something else, unless you just switch to lower body. All right. So nice little story there. Always go on tangents. All right. So no comments yet on that. All right. So second question. So Megan just wants me to dive into the energy systems for a big test, which is really good. It's all, knowledge is power when it comes to training. The more you know about the reasons you're doing things and how things work, the better you will be, because you'll know the purpose of training sessions, why you're doing something, what you're working for, and everything along those lines. Okay, so the big test is designed as a predictor of your VO2 max. So what your VO2 max is a measurement of the amount of oxygen your muscles that can be delivered to your muscles, and your muscles uptake that oxygen. I think it's within a 1 minute period. So no real need to know that, but that is what VO2 max is the amount of oxygen your muscles can use. I'm pretty sure within a 1 minute period. I can't remember the actual thing for it because it's not a massive thing to know. All right. The only way, so remember, the big test is a predictor of that. The only way, and what that VO2 max is a measurement of your fitness. All right. But there is a million things that go into fitness, which I'm just about to go over, that will impact it away from your actual VO2 max. But VO2 max, the only way to really measure it is to be in a lab, all hooked up to oxygen sensors and all sorts of stuff, and doing exercise to properly measure it. Like it's done in a lab to measure it with all the actual tools to do it. And you can get this done. I'm actually going to be looking into getting this done for myself. You can go into universities, you can pay to get it done, or you can get students to do it. Apparently you can go in there and request, like they're always wanting to do trials and stuff. So you can go in and get some students to practice it on you. So I'm going to be looking into that and have a play around with that. But it's really good to know that figure, because then you can work off the zones that I always tell you guys that are actually off your VO2 max as well. Rather than sort of guessing zones and predicting zones, you have set figures. But again, it is a dynamic measurement that will go up as your fitness goes up. All right, so the only way to measure it is in a lab. Now, beep test is a predictor of it. So certain levels that you get up to is predicted for your VO2 max. And that's the same as your 2.4 kilometer run as well. That's a prediction of your VO2 max. But there's a lot of things that can impact how good you go on the beep test or on the 2.4. Aside from your hydration, how well rested you are, how, your nutrition, stressed out, all that sort of stuff, that alone can have an impact on how well you go in the beep test. So it's not really predicting your VO2 max in that way. But other factors as well is how efficient you are at what you're doing. So someone's VO2 max swimming that's swum their whole life, now when they run, that's not really a good predictor of the VO2 max either. So it has to be specific to the sport that you're doing, and you have to be efficient at it. So the beep test, if you're really shitty at the beep test and you're bad at the turns, you're mistiming each shuttle, all that sort of thing, that's going to have an impact on your actual score. And in turn, that's going to have an impact on what your predicted VO2 max is. Other things is your thresholds. So your pain threshold, some people have got a really high pain threshold and they've just got a lot of grit and they can just keep pushing even though they're really hurting. Other people, their heart rate just goes over easy and all of a sudden, I'm so tired, and they stop, right? That's another thing that can impact it. And in your actual anaerobic threshold as well. So the point at which your body switches from predominantly aerobic work to anaerobic work, that threshold there can be very low on people. So when you are at that point, you fatigue really quickly because you're now going into your anaerobic system, which produces a lot of lactate and whatnot, and you can't keep up with it and you end up fatiguing. And there's a whole lot of factors that create that fatigue, not the lactate, right? But your VO2 max may be still up here. So if you've got it tested in the lab, your VO2 max could be still up here, but your threshold is down here. So you've got a lot more potential, but it's not, you're not reaching it because you're fatiguing too quick because your threshold's too low. Whereas other people, their threshold is right up here, but their VO2 max is only here. So they're really high performers, but they haven't got much room to move because their VO2 max is like pretty much capped out. And VO2 max, from what I've read as well, is very genetic based. So you can really increase that anaerobic threshold really well. So that point at which you're switching over. But your VO2 max, apparently you can increase it slightly, but it's very, genetic based. So some people will really have a really high VO2 max. Some people will have a really low one. But either way, the majority of people can't even reach that. Okay, so that's a whole heap of shit about VO2 max. Okay, so moving into the actual beep test itself. Okay, and I'm going to go over energy systems that are going to be used throughout and progress throughout the beep test as you get higher and higher with your levels. Now, remember, again, this all depends on the person. You could just be really inefficient with your movements and just not time the beeps very well. So you may not even make it through all of these energy systems. You may have a really low threshold, so you won't even be in a really low pain threshold. So again, you won't even make it through this progression of energy systems. But I'm going to go over it anyway, just to give you an idea of how you progress. Now, what I want you to realize is it doesn't matter what exercise you are doing, whether it's classed as full anaerobic training or exercise or full aerobic training. It doesn't matter what you're doing. All energy systems are working. Okay, so for those that don't understand energy systems, so you got three energy systems. You got the aerobic, you have the lactate, so so you got the aerobic, and then you got two anaerobic systems. You got the lactate system and the ATP system. Okay, so the ATP one lasts for about 10 seconds. The lactate lasts for about 2 minutes maximum, 2 to 3 minutes. And then the aerobic system is anything above that. So if you're working anything above 2 minutes, then it's the aerobic system, because the anaerobic one just doesn't keep up. It isn't able to keep producing energy in that way. Whereas the anaerobic produce a high amount of force, like weightlifting and all that type of stuff. But it just doesn't last as long because it depletes very quickly and isn't able to remake the energy. All right, so I'm probably confusing you with that. So we're just going to go back into the beat test. All right, remember the beat test is going to last. If you can reach over 2 minutes, what are we working? We're working the aerobic system. So even though the other ones are working in the background, the beat test is predominantly an aerobic workout or an aerobic test. Okay, so we're going to go through many different stages of energy systems. Okay, so we're going to start off when it's nice and easy and you're just doing sort of a quick shuffle towards the other end of the shuttle and back. You're going to be working the low portion of the aerobic system, which is predominantly fat fueled. Okay, you are using fat as the main fuel source because it produces the most amount of energy from one molecule of fuel. So it's producing a large amount of energy, but it can't produce it very quickly. So now that you're in that low part, it's able to keep up. So you could probably hold that pace for a very long time because you're using that fat as a fuel and it's able to sustain that pace for a very, very long time. Whereas once you start stepping up those, as the intervals increase in pace, then that fat fuel is no longer able to sustain the energy output. So it's too slow to keep up with the energy. So now we're still in the aerobic system, but instead of using fat as the fuel, now we're stepping it up and now we have to use sugar as the fuel or glycogen, which is stored sugar. Now, this one doesn't produce as much energy, but it's quicker. Okay, so it's able to keep up with it, but it's got limited source. Whereas the fat fuel lasts forever, pretty much. It's what you use just all day long, walking around doing nothing. And then the sugar one is when you step it up, but it's got a limited amount of it still lasts a fair while, but it's limited. Okay, once it steps up even further, after whatever you get to on the beat test, and it starts to really hurt, if you're able to push through that pain threshold, now we're working in the threshold area. So again, with the threshold, that's where you're going from the top of your aerobic system, and now you're starting to sort of go into your anaerobic system. And what happens at this point is now, yes, you're still using that sugar as a fuel through the aerobic system, but now you're also starting to use that sugar for fuel through the lactate system. And now that's producing a shit ton of lactate and other factors that create fatigue. Now, if you train at those areas, what can happen is you get really good because lactate is also an energy source, right? It's not the thing that makes you fatigue. It's a whole heap of other factors that make you fatigue. The lactate you can actually reuse, just like you're using sugar. You can reuse that lactate to produce more energy. So if you train more at that threshold level, once you've created a really good base, when you train more at that threshold level, now your body not only gets really efficient at using glycogen in the aerobic system, but it also starts getting really good at reusing lactate as an energy source. So now it bumps up that threshold, and you can hold it for longer and longer. Now, once you've gone past that threshold, once the beat test, at that point, you're just like, shit, this is hurting. I'm starting to really fatigue. You start to get a bit of a burn because that lactate buildup is getting a bit too much for you to be able to reabsorb and use. Okay. Once you go past that point and it's just like, all right, I'm done soon. That's when you're just pretty much predominantly in that anaerobic system and you're just giving it that last, 10 to 60 seconds of what you've got left, because now you've gone out of the aerobic system and you're in the anaerobic system and just giving it that one last push. All right. So that's pretty much an overview. Hopefully I've explained it in simple terms for you to be able to understand that. But yeah, that just shows you the progression in fuel sources progression in energy sources that you use throughout the beat test. But like I said before, it all depends, your pain threshold, your efficiency, all that sort of stuff can play a role with whether you're actually even hitting those like that full progression of energy sources. But yeah, so I was going to say something. Can't remember what it was. Oh yeah, so with that and in the training that I give you guys, understanding that progression that you go through. Now look at the training you do. Okay, we start off in the first phase in a base aerobic phase. We'll always circle back to it as well. Once we go through, we'll circle back. Okay, so in aerobic base phase, what we predominantly work is those first two, mainly the first stage of that aerobic system, and getting really good and efficient at using that fat as fuel, because the better you get at using that fat as a fuel in the aerobic system, the longer the other stuff holds off. It doesn't just go through just at certain stages. Like you can get better at using that fat as a fuel. So now it doesn't switch over to sugar until further up the line, because you've gotten really good at it. So that's with all your low aerobic base style training. And it also will topple into the sugar fuel as well, and get really efficient at that, so that we bump up that threshold. Because now, instead of going, all right, we've run out of like our fat fuel's not keeping up here, or and our aerobic sugar isn't keeping up here, now we're hitting the threshold. If we bump them up, now all of a sudden we're not switching over to here. Now all of a sudden we're not switching over to here. So that threshold, that fatigue line, is getting higher and higher. Okay. And then as we progress through the program, or like progress through some sort of structured program, then we move into threshold stuff. So now we're working on that top end, the ability of the body to really produce a lot of power, reuptake that lactate that is now being produced because you're playing with that threshold line, and get really good at that, so you can hold it for longer as well. So instead of that lactate really accumulating at level 8, now it's not happening until level 9, and you can hold it for level 9 and 10. All right. And then the anaerobic system, that's just your last push, your last hurrah. We will train those sort of things as well, but it's not a major factor in the beep test, so I don't really touch on it too much unless you train with me for a fair while through something like custom training and stuff. We start playing around with that sort of thing. I need a drink. All right, give me a comment if you guys have got any questions with any of that sort of stuff. Paz, good to see you on here. All right, need a breather. I'm nearly losing my voice here. Okay, so last one. And this sort of goes along with what we're talking about anyway, with the whole energy systems and everything. So a lot of the training that I give you guys, I'll assign zones with your running, with your conditioning training. I'll give you some zones to work within. The reason for that is exactly what I just explained previously about the energy systems used throughout. So those people that go into workouts thinking, I just need to go balls to the wall every single time, are they getting really good at burning that fat as an aerobic fuel source? No, because they're not using it, because it's not keeping up right from the start. So you're going straight to a threshold. So now you've completely skipped that energy system, and you're not getting good at that. So now you're not really going to get much benefit. You may get a little bit of a threshold bump, but that base is completely rat shit. So yeah, so that's why we work with zone training, with zones, so that we work different energy systems throughout. And hopefully with that explanation that I gave before, gives you a good understanding of why we do different zones. Now, with those zones, right now with your training, I'm going to be changing up a little bit, but I'm not going to go into it too much and confuse you guys. Just work with what I've got at the moment. What I've got at the moment for you guys is zone 1, 2, and 3. Just really simple stuff. Zone 1 is 70 to 80% of your max heart rate. Zone 2 is 80 to 90% of your max heart rate. And zone 3 is 90 to 100% of your max heart rate. And looking at that with those energy systems that I was just going over, 70 to 80, pretty much your fat burning. You're going to start getting it, like your aerobic system. You're going to start getting into some sugar burning as well. Then zone 2, between 80 and 90%, that's going to be more threshold training, but The reason I'm changing it up because threshold training is more towards your 90% there, and I want a smaller window for you guys to be working with. But yeah, predominantly like threshold style training, and then your 90 to 100% is like max effort threshold, just balls to the wall type stuff. Now, zone training doesn't work when you're doing stuff less than 2 minutes, okay? Because your heart rate just doesn't. You're not working the aerobic system, so zone training doesn't really work with that. You go off effort and times and everything when you're doing less than 2 minute, unless the rests are manipulated so that you're getting an aerobic effect from it. But anyway, back to the how to calculate your max heart rate. So with your zones, they're going off your max heart rate. So those percentages that I gave you, they're off your maximum heart rate. So there's a few different ways to know your max heart rate. All right, the very first one is using a watch. Okay, your watch, all the new watches, any watch that you've got is going to either give you a prediction of your max heart rate. You'll put in your details, your age, sex, all that sort of stuff, and it'll calculate a general max heart rate for you. And then as you go through your training, if you hit a new max heart rate, it will readjust to that max heart rate. So now your percentages will be working off that actual field tested max heart rate because you've hit that before. Now, if you don't have any of that and you just want to know your zones, maybe you're working with just the equipment at the gym, you're just putting your hands on there or whatever. A really easy way to predict your max heart rate. It's not accurate in any way. It is for some people, but 90% of people it isn't. That's why it's better just to use an actual tracker, and then when you're hitting new ones, it'll readjust. But 220 minus your age. Okay, so 220 minus, I'm 35, minus 35, what's that? 185. That is pretty much my max, very close to my max heart rate when I'm running. Now, it's different when you're doing different sports as well. So when I'm doing cycling, my heart rate's my max heart rate is way higher than that. So yeah, it all depends on what sport you're doing. But if you're just working with your running, yeah, just go 220 minus your age, and that'll give you a good predictor. Now, once you know that max heart rate, or you've got it in your watch, now you just need to have a look at percentages. With watches, you can even get it to display, which I do all the time, and you can have an alert, like a low alert and high alert. So set it as a low, like if you're working in zone 1, set a low alert for 70% and a high alert for 80%, or just have it displayed and know, like have the percentage displayed, or know what the actual heart rates are within those zones. So a way to know that is 220 minus your age, max heart rate. Now from your max heart rate, if you're working with 70% as your low, times it by 0.7. It'll give you a figure. That's your low figure. That's what you don't want to go below. 80% times max heart rate by 0.8. Now that's your high figure. Go into your training session knowing that. Now you've got your zone there. Now it's really important zones, like I was talking about before, with hitting the correct energy system that you want to train for that actual training workout, and also knowing you are actually in that zone. So you're not working too low, because going out for a walk is not going to get you even in the low aerobic zone. You need to actually get in and get a bit of a sweat on to get yourself there. And another thing as well to note when you're doing zone training, don't expect to get to that zone in the first 2 minutes of exercise. You need to progressively build up the effort over a 2 to 3 minute period, and then be in that training zone. If you go too hard, too quick, talking about the energy systems that we're talking about before, you're going to be working in the anaerobic system, and your heart rate hasn't had a chance to actually show you how hard you're working, because it drifts up. It takes a while for it to come up. If you go too hard, too quick, and you're trying to get there like within 30 seconds to a minute, you're going to be working mainly in that anaerobic system, creating a whole heap of metabolites and fatigue in your body. And then when you do actually get to that correct energy system, you're going to be running slow as shit, because your body's super fatigued because you went way too hard, too quick. So just use those first 2 to 3 minutes to progressively build up that effort to get yourself in that correct zone. Okay. That's it for today. 35 minutes of talking shit. Hopefully you've taken a lot out of that. I think I explained the energy systems really well. I've tried to do it a few times and it hasn't come across too well for you guys, but hopefully that one has. And if you've got any further questions with this, chuck them up in the comments and I'll definitely get around and answer it for you. But yeah, hopefully that gives you a bit more knowledge in why we train certain ways, how the body works throughout the beep test and why we want to hit different zones of training for different workouts as well, because they all have different purposes. That is it. I'll just check if there's any comments. I'll give you guys a chance to ask anything. I'll just give you 30 seconds. Yeah, even if you're watching in replay, feel free to chuck anything up there. I'll get the notification. No, looks like it's it. All right, good to see a couple of yous on here. Hopefully I get a few notifications with the number 2 saying that you're watching it in replay. But that is it for today. All right, I'll catch you all next week.